Good morning and welcome to the Small Business Support Group. Ooh, wasn't that exciting? Probably a little bit exciting, too exciting. We got Maz in. Good morning, Maz.
Good morning.
And we have Grant in as well.
That was amazing.
Did I spell everybody's name right?
You did, yeah.
You've stepped it up a notch now, mate. I feel under pressure now to perform.
We've got credits as well, which is the funniest thing. Andy is on his way in. He's got trouble connecting, he says. So Andy is on his way in. Maz, what are you talking about this morning other than the titles?
Wow, that was amazing. Really loved that. I'm talking about the online sales, the lifeline for the retailers.
Okie dokie. Grant, I think we're going to follow up on that. That's what's going on as well. Grant, you're talking about that and cars, possibly?
Yes, I've got a little tax jiggery pokery if you're in the UK to do with cars that I can talk to you about if you're a business owner.
Brilliant, excellent. Okay, Maz, take it away. Let's get things rolling.
Okay, so good afternoon to everybody, and it's Monday. So online shopping has been a boon for some retailers during the COVID-19 crisis, and it has been a lifeline for others. But for nearly all companies, it's actually brought a slew of new challenges. Many retailers were already expanding their e-commerce offerings prior to the coronavirus pandemic. And the global crisis, though, has added a greater urgency to that effort. With closed stores and customers holed up at home, online shopping suddenly became the only sales option for many stores. I mean, the demand for online shopping just shot up. While the pandemic continues to eat into retailers' profit, online shopping actually emerged as a lifeline. H&M recorded a 50% drop in revenue in their second quarter, but actually their online sales grew by 36%. And H&M have said it's closing more stores than it's opening this year. I mean, consumer behavior, guys, has just changed rapidly, and fashion retailers are looking to expand their online presence. I was reading the Wall Street Journal on the weekend, and according to that, Nike saw its sales drop by 38% in the last quarter, but the sportswear giant got a boost from digital apps and online sales, and that was about, I think they said, 75%. So during lockdown, consumers took to e-commerce in a really big way. Quarantine has relaunched and accelerated online sales. Inditex, which is Zara owner, which is the world's largest fashion retailer, saw online sales grow 95% year on year in April, and announced that actually it's going to close up to 1,200 physical stores over the next 2 years. And Inditex has said e-commerce is one of the best things that has ever happened to them, because they've said it's awakened the big retailers from their lethargy and put customers at the center. And it made me think, and I personally feel that maybe it must become more ethical and less sparse, concentrating package deliveries on a weekly basis and not penalizing returns. I think we are at a point where we need to find the right balance between optimism and retail. And we need to be looking at numbers from very different angles. I mean, when this many people lose their jobs, then does it mean going green goes down the drain? Online can never compensate for the loss in traditional retail, nor can it replace it. I mean, Zara was making 15% of its sales online. 95% increase there does not mean much. 12,000 stores don't close without a reason. And there's something called cabin fever. You don't just sit in your home, work from there, shop from there, sleep there, eat there. We are social animals. We need to interact. And finally, retail business actually accounts for 10 to 15% of workforce in developed markets. And this workforce is younger than average, is actually rather female and not very highly educated. So in the long run, increase in online means higher unemployment and less purchasing power, and increase in unequal distribution of income. So I don't know. I'm really not sure. Is it a positive? I mean, I'm in two minds, and it would be great to hear your thoughts, Grant and Matt. And what do you guys think?
Well, we've just got Andy's has just come in as well. Morning, Andy.
Morning,
Hi,
everyone.
Andy.
Morning.
Morning.
I mean, we've all used obviously online ordering over the past few months, so it's I think it's been vital for the sanity of everybody as well, because I think obviously Amazon have done very well. And Grant, what do you think?
Grant, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Grant.
Yeah, I wrote an article on this yesterday. I write a blog once a week, just sort of asking some of these questions. I mean, it was, who was it that said it? That was it. The managing director or the CEO of PayPal said that COVID-19, the lockdown, has effectively accelerated us five to 10 years into the future, just because of the adaptation of online. It's taken us to where we were going to go anyway. And, you know, there are positives to this, but also there's going to be a lot of readjustment now. You know, as humans, we're adaptable, aren't we? You know, and we will adapt quickly. The new normal, as everybody keeps talking about, will become the normal, and we'll get used to it. So the question that I ask myself, and I'm trying to imagine what the city centres and the retail parks, what life's going to look like as this readjustment happens, because I think it's pretty much set in stone now that we are going to be losing a lot of retail stores. The adaptation of online is going to be online ordering, e-commerce is going to be massively accelerated. That's only going to increase. The result of that is going to be that our city centres, and also don't forget, we've also got the home working. So not only have we got the e-commerce, we've also got people working from home. So it's not just retail, it's office space that's also not going to be used as much. And I think this is going to change completely the landscape of city centres. You know, I work in Birmingham city centre. Even though there are people back at work now, the shops are open, it's substantially quieter, and it's not sustainable in the environment pre-COVID. In other words, with the same business rates, with the same rents, I can't see it being sustainable. But Maz, you and I were having a quick chat before the show, talking about people now looking to spend their money more on experiences. And you mentioned then about the fact, you know, getting cabin fever. We were already talking about this prior to lockdown, about the way that, because you know, we know this has been coming, the transition to e-commerce and home working, we were on our way. All that's happened is that we've had a huge acceleration towards it because we've been forced into it. So therefore, we've jumped into the future, and all of a sudden we're having to adapt to this new scenario. That, by the way, guys, it was going to happen anyway. It was going to happen anyway. But experience is what we were talking about, Maz. People now look for experience, and retailers were already experimenting with this, whereby, you know, most of the purchasing is made online. However, when you go to a shop, when you go to a retail, you go for the experience that you get. And that's where a lot of businesses have already been starting to experiment with this, where, you know, you don't just go and try on clothes and stand in a queue and walk out, because, you know, you can do that online. You actually go there, you may get, you know, a shopping assistant, one of these people that, you know, gives you advice. You get, you know, you might get tea and coffee, you know, or a glass of champagne. You might go in groups and try on different outfits. There's all sorts of different experiences that you can gain in real life that you can't gain through e-commerce. And so what is now going to be interesting to see how that retail space that's going to be left empty as shops like H&M close loads of stores and subsidize their income through online. How is the landscape going to change? And it's fascinating to see what is going to happen. You know, we saw a huge increase over the last 10 years in restaurants. You know, you imagine 10, 15 years ago, going out for a meal used to be you know, a big deal. It used to be. I remember when I was a kid. So we go back 30 years. You know, 35 years. There were kids in my school. I remember having conversations who would never have dreamed of going eating out. That was a you know, something that posh people did. But now we live in a landscape where people do it on a regular basis. There are people that don't cook at home and eat out the whole time. Is that something that we're going to keep in this new environment? You know, is that experience that we're going to be looking to replace because retail isn't going to be as, you know, as prevalent? Will it be replaced with eating out more? Will it be replaced with other experiential, you know, things that we can do? I think it's fascinating to think what, you know, we're now moving towards.
Well, as you're talking about restaurants, the Deliveroo boss, obviously Deliveroo, as well as Uber Eats, has done very well over the COVID lockdown period, and has said that the restaurants are really hurting now, because obviously they've been shut down. Some of the good ones the clever ones have stayed open and have used Deliveroo and Uber Eats to get their food out there. But I think because of what's going to happen when they open on the 4th, and also limiting the number of people going in, it's just not going to work for some of these restaurants. It's just not going to work. And it goes back. I think, you know, we've all mentioned that it goes back from the restaurant. Then obviously the landlord's got to take a little bit of responsibility and help out here. There's got to be, the business rates has got to be looked at all along, even to electricity, gas, water, because everything is going to change now. The business models that we entered, or we had as we entered COVID, has got to be scrapped and started again, because we could be, unless we find something to cure it, this could be with us for 12 months, the way we have to deal with it, which is fine. You know, people go out there, wash their hands, socially distance. You know, we'll work around it. As we say, we're humans, we adapt, so we can work around that. But the business model as it is going to fall over for a lot of businesses. It's just not going to work. Andy, what are you just about to take a sip of tea or coffee there, Andy? So what I mean, on a business level for restaurants and pubs, with, you know, myself, Grant, and yourself, we've all been in the license trade. What's your thoughts on that? How things are going to happen for restaurants?
It's as Grant has said, you know, everything's been accelerated now, but unfortunately, I get onto my favourite subject: politicians.
How do you do that? How did you do that?
Politicians, national and local, have been destroying business and entrepreneurship for decades. I could take you many cities that used to be hives of activity in industry, commerce, enterprise, and entrepreneurship have been destroyed. And the first thing that they've done wrong is they've pursued, like sheep, these car parking charges. Right? Now, in Australia, by law, the council has to give 2 hours free parking, right, in all areas of the country and cities and towns, except in certain what they call central business districts, right, which is the heart of a city, where they don't have to give 2 hours free. But you take an equivalent of Solihull, where most of us live, 3 of the 4 of us live, is that in Australia would have to give by law 2 hours free parking, right? Now, unfortunately, the whole setup of the way the local government is run, it needs to bring in money from those parking charges. So the whole business model of running a country is completely wrong and flawed, right? This happened before COVID, where places like Stoke-on-Trent were a ghost town, empty shops. Our local high street, Knoll High Street, has got empty shops. You go to Stratford-upon-Avon, excuse me, which has 5 million visitors a year in normal times, and that's got empty shops. So there was an oversupply anyway, right? But what we've got to do is make these towns, and some of them have adapted, to become more entertainment centres, like you talked about, experiences. So people go out, they do some retail shopping, they watch entertainment, you know, live music, they watch the buskers, there's a market there, and then there's food and drink there. Now, obviously, there is the issue about the business model, about, you know, social distancing for these restaurants. But like in Solihull, we've got this open area in Solihull Town Centre in the square, in Mel Square, that is actually food and drink, and that's outside. Or because of the inclement weather, you put a cover on it, right, of some description, but you don't make it totally enclosed, right? So it's just like a big canopy or something like that you could put on it. So that's what the rethinking is about. Unfortunately, politicians aren't really entrepreneurs, and they're not really forward-thinking people. There are a few who become councillors and MPs who have been in business, but generally they are not, and they certainly don't like to take risks. However, whether they like it or not, if it is what any of them are watching, they've got to, and they're going to have to, right? So the first thing they've got to do is find a new way of restructuring their business model. I could easily come up with quite a few ideas for them and suggestions how they could do it, but we've got to get rid of parking charges, right? And that is the main thing. People are going to be reluctant to use public transport, so the footfall into a town and city centres are going to be way down. But again, you know, if everybody just wore masks and that was enforced on public transport, it would make life a lot easier. So these centres are going to be entertainment centres, right? And they've got to have perhaps less units or smaller units to cater for small amounts of people, or shall we say, a unit that can have people in for eating and drinking safely, socially distancing, or something like that. So that's what's going to happen. And until the government, local and national, get their brains in gear and be ahead of the curve instead of always behind, as we saw in this pandemic, you know, they're months behind other countries. You know, we have got to get our acts together. But unfortunately, again, back to the whole structure of the system, it's flawed because we allow politicians who've never run anything to become prime minister. A journalist, Boris Johnson, is prime minister. How the hell has that happened?
It always gets around to that. I don't know how he does that. There is the boss of Deliveroo have put an open letter which they're going to send to the government this week regarding slashing VAT on restaurant food to help the crisis as we're going through, and also maintaining the job retention scheme for restaurants as well. So it is, reconstruction is going to have to happen, isn't it? It's just the way it's going to be. Darren's just sent a quick one in. Home working is a huge challenge for big corporates, and the hybrid model is even harder. Massive firewall, secure access, huge internet pipes into data centers, technical and physical challenges, as well as the soft people management side, which is obviously the home working side of things. So everything is going to be looked at. Don't you think, Grant? Everything's going to be looked at.
Yeah, and you know, there needs to be a certain amount of readjustment, I'm sure, because, like we say, because the consumers have been shown this new way of doing things, they're going to be making different decisions, and then you combine that with the ongoing, threat of the virus. We've got some readjustment, and the bit that kind of breaks my heart, but is likely to happen is we're going to lose a lot of businesses, because we're not going to need as many retail shops. Because the people are spending online, we're not going to need as many restaurants and pubs. And that old saying, survival of the fittest, is going to happen. And I think, the economy is going to shrink as a result. But it will come back in different areas. And you can't stop progress. It's one of those things where, the world that we used to live in, where everybody used to go out to the shops, at the weekend and do their shopping and have a coffee, and it's not going to be like that anymore in the same way. It's just not, because more people have seen that they can shop online, they can save money, they can do all their comparisons. I mean, retail was already struggling. Let's not take this away. We were already heading this way, and it's going to be devastating to the economy, having compressed into a few short months. But this was on the cards already, guys. And what we should be doing, in my view, is adapting as quickly as possible. So, and not trying to save what was already going. So, in other words, we were already going to be losing these shops. At some point, we were already going to be seeing less potential restaurants, and we will be seeing more experiential, environments. and we in my view, we should be putting everything into that scenario. What Andy talked about, mentioned there, if you go into Solihull, you can have an experience the way it's laid out, because at the moment with the street food thing that they've got going on, and it's all kind of enclosed in an outdoor area, if you like, so you can do your shopping, you can have some food, there's buskers there. It's an experience going out to the shop. You're not going to get that by sitting online clicking away, and some people will want that, but nowhere near as many as they used to. So that we are going to see our city. This is what I'm sort of looking at. What is going to happen to our city centres? Because unless the councils, the politicians address this right now and say we've got to adapt. We can't just try and get it back to what it used to be, because it's never going back. It's never going back to that.
Because I mean, obviously, a few years back we had that major change round where the out of town shopping centres popping up and getting bigger, and they said that was a death of the high street, and it was literally, the shops in the high street that we went through that, didn't we? Because there was so many that disappeared. Then they came back, and then we're doing this again. So I think it's always, I know it's difficult and it's really hard, but it is a sort of a reset button as well, isn't it? To make sure
that out of town shopping was a flawed policy as well, set in by the politicians that actually contributed to the death of the high street.
Well, it is. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
To get back to the point. Councils impose high charges, parking charges. You look at Birmingham, their high charges in Birmingham, for instance. Then they allowed out-of-town retail parks with free parking.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive. And this is the problem. What happens when you've got people, inexperienced people, put into positions of power, local and national? It happens. But just on the point of how you do rebuild an economy, I'm about to write to the local representatives, the West Midlands Mayor, my MP, and to Sajid Javid, who's written a paper about rebuilding the economy. Unfortunately, like always, the Conservatives reverted to type. And they're going back to the age-old policies. Let's cut taxes. Yes, that's one aspect, and it could be useful. But then if there's no businesses paying taxes or employees paying taxes, there's no point cutting taxes. If there's no businesses making any profit, they're not going to get any taxes. So there's no point cutting them. Again, wrong policy. What they should be doing, which I've written to them, is bad decisions they've made in the past. For instance, you see, the Conservative policy, and by the way, Labour are not much better, so it's not about Conservatives or Labour or anything like that. All of them are quite useless in their long-term thinking, right? Conservative policy is free enterprise, free market, and privatisation. Okay? The problem is with that is it's all that's allowed to happen is for our great brands and businesses to be bought by foreign entities, and either closed or moved abroad, right? What we should be doing, we're spending 14 billion a month on COVID issues with furlough and all that, and we're getting nothing for it. Let's put that 14 billion into rebuilding businesses that make things, right? You cannot close down a factory, build another shopping centre, build apartments if you've got no commerce or enterprise or industry making things and making money. And also, we must stop this over-reliance on China of importing everything. We're importing too much. Let's start making more of our own products again, right? And the government should set aside 100 billion for a start, right? And put it into that fund that starts enterprise. Not with strings attached, and it actually is owned by the people or the government, shall we say? Not the government, it's the taxpayer who owns it. So therefore, they can't be sold to another foreign company or entity and taken off, and all of the intellectual property and the brand taken away. You look at Thomas Cook. Thomas Cook was closed before COVID, right? It's a 180-year-old company, and the government would sign a measly £100 million guarantee, not cash, guarantee. So they let it go bust. The government then spent £500 million in cash rescuing all the people who are stranded abroad. And it cost the government 500 million. And then all the payouts for the redundancies and everything else that the company couldn't pay. And they put 25,000 people on the scrap heap. Yeah. And that one job loss affects, on average, 4 in total. So that's 100,000 people affected by Thomas Cook. And all they had to do was sign a measly 100 million guarantee. In contrast, Germany saved the Thomas Cook subsidiary in Germany called Condor, an airline, and pumped in approximately 300 million cash to save it. A few months later, they sold that airline, Condor, to LOT, the Polish state-owned airline, for about the same amount of money. They may even make a profit. And that is clever thinking, not stupid short-termism. Oh, we've got to let the market take it. You cannot let the market take the UK, because the UK is going to be an independent nation on December the 31st. We've got to be self-sufficient, right? And if we're not self-sufficient, they've done it with the motor industry. Every major motor manufacturer in the UK is foreign-owned. So if the market isn't right here, they're going to move it to another factory elsewhere. Sunderland have just laid off 450 jobs. Nissan have got factories all over the world. Yeah, same as Honda in Swindon is leaving. Why are they leaving? Because they don't need a factory in the UK, because it was originally put there to service the EU. Now that UK is out of the EU, again, madness thinking, no joined up thinking. All of Boris's policy on Brexit is, let's get Brexit done. Okay, where's the plan? There's nothing. There's no other plan. What we should be able to put all this money and rebuild our industries. Heavy industry, food industry, agriculture, power. The country that invented the tank doesn't make a tank anymore. Now, some people say, oh, we don't need tanks. Well, whatever that is, it's industry. It's industry. The country that invented the nuclear power station has got China and France building its nuclear power station. How has this happened? How on earth has this happened in the UK? I'll tell you how it happened. Mediocre politicians and nobody with any qualification running the country who's qualified with experience to run the country. We've let our great brands and industries be sold off to it all over the world, right? You know, Mini is owned by BMW. How did this happen? I'll tell you how it happened. No joined up thinking, no long-term view, and bankers who go for short-term greedy profits, and a government that's weak and unable to start them. And that's your problem. We've got an opportunity now to rebuild our country, our economy, our nation, and be Great Britain. Made in Britain. Let's really make it made in Britain. Not made in Britain, but foreign owned. Let's make it in Britain, right? Let's take the Honda plant that is going to be empty soon, and let's pump in the money and let's build another car there. The factory's set up. It's one of the in Castle Bromwich. We used to make 320.
Oh, still going.
We don't make a single aircraft in the UK now. We make some parts for aircraft and engines, but we don't make a single aircraft in the UK anymore. Why? I'll tell you why.
Oh, I know you're going to come.
Who have got no nous, no experience of business, building a country. We've got to have invest in our agriculture. We've got to produce more food, right? We're bringing in too much food, and it's all getting more expensive.
Okay, let's just pause it there, Andy, for a second, and we'll end this. Fine, we understand what you're saying, and people have been commenting and saying that they agree with you. We'll park that subject there for a second. Is it just? I want to ask you a question. There's something that was on the news about 2 hours ago about Lookers, the Lookers car group. Have you read it or heard about anything about that this morning?
Well, I haven't heard the news this morning, but
is that about the £19 million hole they've got in their finances? Do you know anything about that? Have you heard about that?
I heard about they're in trouble anyway.
Yeah, they are in trouble because they're now being investigated because they've over the past few years, auditors of Grant Thornton have been investigating the firm, and they found a £19 million hole in their profits. So they were obviously showing higher profits than them before. I just wondered if you'd heard anything about it. That's why I wanted to bring that up.
Had a lot of money to me. 19 million doesn't sound a lot of money.
No, not really. Not for that size group.
Well, it's over $1 billion, I think, anyway.
That's right. So, Grant, just briefly, because we're already hit our half of our mark, you want to just talk about your car and a little bit of a tax dodge That's
Yes.
might be,
So it's my
interesting.
end of year just coming up, and one of the things that I've just been working on this morning is I've owned electric cars for well, I say a fully electric car for some time now, and the UK government at the moment have got a ruling on company car tax that if you own a company car that is, or the company owns a company car and you use it that is fully electric, there's no car tax, no personal car tax on it. Now, I've obviously been in business for 20 years plus, and I've never had a company car because it's always been, as the owner of the business, a bit of a waste of time because you get charged, you get the company car tax, personal company car tax, and it kind of, takes any benefit away. But now that the government are actually saying if you buy an electric car, a fully electric car, through the company, there's no personal liability on your company car tax. It makes sense. So with that in mind, I'm actually buying the company car from myself. Effectively, the business is buying it from myself, which means that the payments that I now pay or will be paying for that car, instead of coming directly out of my wages, which I paid tax on, will go out of the business, which will reduce the profits of the business, which will save me corporation tax. I still get to use the car in the same way, and it's a win-win all round. So this is one thing I think, Andy, where the government have got it right, because I know that you've got lots of opinions about diesel and all that kind of stuff, but I'm a huge advocate for electric cars. I was an early adopter. I've had my car since 2016, fully electric. I've got another hybrid, which is it will run fully on electric. It's a plug-in hybrid, and I just think they're the future. They're absolutely awesome. And now that the range issue is largely no longer an issue, it used to be that people complained about electric cars not having enough electric range. Pretty much all the electric cars you buy now have got more range than you'll ever need. They're just better in every way, electric cars. Don't get me wrong, I'm a petrol head. I've had sports cars all my life and I love them, but electric cars are just better. And the government doing this whole scenario whereby you can now do it through the company and not pay tax is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So if you've got a company, guys, and you want to get a car that is not going to cost you anything and you can pay for it through the company, meaning that you no longer need to, well, you can take it off your profits, I'd look into fully electric cars, and there's loads of choice out there now, loads of choice.
Yeah,
and it's hardly cost me anything because I already own the car. It's not worth a fat lot. So it's
no, that's excellent. Well, that's sort of, I think we need to do a show on electric cars generally, Grant, and so we'll do that in the future.
I'd love to.
We definitely.
As I went in a Porsche Taycan on Saturday, that was a fully electric Porsche, absolute beast of a car.
Was it great?
Just comment on that point about the electric cars. Yeah, low carbon and electric is great, but you don't destroy an industry, right, in pursuit of something that hasn't been adopted yet, right? 100%. And that's what the government has done with its car policy. And there's 3 million jobs at stake. We cannot afford to lose our motor industry. And unfortunately, unlike other countries, our motor industry, as I've just said, is foreign owned. So therefore, those companies who own that facility, the UK manufacturing facility, can move it elsewhere, and they will. Honda are already doing that. So yes, all for that. The one thing the government haven't done right about that policy, Grant, is what they threatened to, is they were going to allow people an allowance to swap their diesel and petrol car for an electric cars. They've been talking about it for years, but again, as usual, they've procrastinated and sat on the fence and haven't implemented it, right? Had they have implemented it, you would see a massive, massive uptake of electric, more so than at the moment, which is very small in percentage of the cars. So that's what they haven't done, and they've been talking about it, an allowance, which is an exchange allowance. So on top of the value of the car they part exchange, you get in the government putting in, I don't know, £5,000, £6,000. In fact, Grant, I think you got something that they did have it for a while and then they stopped it.
No, they're still doing the grants. I think it's I might need correcting on this. I think it's between 5,000 and 3,500 on every electric car. You get a grant.
Is that still available now?
Yeah, I think it might be a bit less. I think I got 5,000 off mine.
You had
I think it might be 3.5 now.
You had a fantastic deal on your deal, but I think they've either stopped it
They
or
haven't stopped it.
they've made it less. Anyway, but look, that's what they do. It's simple. People go with, and the problem is with electric cars is that to buy them, they're so much more expensive than an equivalent petrol or diesel. That's the problem. So people then are thinking, okay, it's about money. So if the government equalised the differential, the price differential, quite easily to do with that allowance, you get a much more take up. And again, simple joined up thinking that the government and politicians are not very good at. I'm sorry to say, but I'm all for electric. I recycle. I do all my bit, but I'm not going to destroy an economy and 3 million jobs for it, like some people would have you do.
But you say that, Andy. Aren't the manufacturers all moving out? Aren't they making electric cars?
Jaguar's complete production line's gone electric.
Yeah.
Jaguar's complete production line is turned to electric.
Well, not complete. They have got an electric production line, but they are. But
look, they're getting rid of all of them. Jaguar are. They're getting rid of everything.
Yeah. In due course, they are. You can still buy diesel and petrol Jags at the moment. They're all got a BMW. Got a whole town in Germany that's dedicated to their electric program. But again, the problem is it's supply and demand. If people don't want the electric cars, the manufacturers aren't going to make them, and that's the issue. And the problem is the government aren't addressing that issue by saying here's an extra allowance. Ever so simple. People do like that. I would do it.
It's true. That I agree with that one. I agree with that. I don't think it's destroying an industry though.
Car now. You look at some electric cars. Some electric cars are at least £5,000 to £10,000 more than the equivalent petrol or diesel. Petrol's cheaper than diesel anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just that's what they need to do, and then they also need to do. I'll tell you a story. In December last year, just quickly,
Andy.
About electric. With my client, they got a Tesla. We went up. They picked me up. We went up to Leeds for the Christmas party, right, for the clients. And on the way up there, the M1, we were going up. We had to come off the motorway, turn around, come back down the southbound carriageway to get to a service station on the motorway that had Tesla points. We got there. Luckily, there was 2 spare. There was about 20 points, but only 2 spare. So we got on there and we sat there for 45 minutes, had a coffee, went to get a coffee, come back and charged it up. Carried on, had to go down southbound again, go around and back on ourselves and up the mountain. This is the M1. So we've had to go northbound. We have to go turn around and come back on ourselves. The next day, we're coming southbound anyway, so we had to do it again. Again, this time, there was one charging point free. There's not enough charging points. We're talking the M1 here, and there's not enough charging points. This is not rocket science, guys. Okay, we got service stations every 30 miles or less. Bang, government, bang, put them in. No, because the government's thinking, we'll let the private sector do it. The private sector is not going to do it if there's not enough profit in it. And at the moment, there's not enough profit. Tesla do it because it helps them sell cars. That's why they've done it. And this is the problem. There's not enough charging points. I can tell you that now for a fact. This
argument could go on because I think Grant wants to jump in there. Do you want to say anything briefly, Grant, or do you want to?
I think let's have a show on this because this is one argument I can have with Andy, and I know a lot about it.
Yeah, and also I'll just add.
Are there enough charging points?
For Tesla, yeah.
But
nobody else.
Right, stop there then.
One then.
No, there aren't. But it's a bigger argument than that. But yeah, I agree.
Northbound M1 from Birmingham to Leeds. There's not a northbound.
Should we do this another day? Because this.
We're running for 40 minutes now. Come on,
got an appointment.
I'll start muting everybody. Right, so sorry, Maz, that you didn't come in on that car petrol head type of conversation. Now, I do apologise about that. We've got. I just want to briefly talk about this. Grant, please explain this photograph really quickly. Why were you at a pub for a start?
My local Vaults, my favourite pub. Just up the road was open doing takeaway beer, and they basically marked out the car park so you could. That's what those red and white stripes are. So right. you could have a beer in a plastic pint in the car park.
That just sounds like it's stretching the way there.
What happened to my invite? You know what?
I only went to Tesco's. I looked over and I'm like, oh my God, the vaults is open. You couldn't see me for dust.
That's so funny. And so while you were at the pub, Maz was in a field talking to some cows for some reason. We don't know what was going on there. That's her new friends. Right, that is it for today. We've got some credits coming up. Just to let you know, we've already infringed Facebook rules, and they've already shouted at me 17 times for using that music at the start of the show. So I'm going to have to go over and redub the music because it was the propeller heads. We're going to play it again at the end. So I'm going to get another 17 emails from Warner Brothers. Right then, Maz, thank you very much. Grant, thank you. And Andy, thank you very much. We will see you tomorrow
Good week.
midday. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.